Okay, so I want to do a little short video going over my Linux rice. I feel like everyone is making their own Linux rice videos, and I have been using Home Manager for roughly the last 2-ish years and NixOS for roughly the last year. And so I kind of wanted to go over the rice that I have settled on. You'll see that it's very business oriented. It's very simple, no waifus, very convenient, and a lot of the rice kind of falls into terminal optimization rather than just like desktop environment type stuff. So yeah, let me show you kind of what we're working with here. So the first thing that I think is the most important to share is that I am on Niri. The one thing that most people like about Niri over Hyperland is the horizontal scrolling. So I'll show what that looks like here. So I can open up a terminal, which I use Alacrity. But if I open up more than the window lets me have, kind of the one workspace, what will happen here is it will actually open a new one to the right. And you can kind of just do that infinitely. So you can scroll left and right as far as you want. That is something that a lot of people switch to Niri for. I don't tend to use it that much. The only time that I really use that horizontal scrolling is sometimes I will have something like Firefox open. And then to the right of that, I will have a little notes pad. And so what I'll do is I'll just open up my editor, which I'll go into in a little bit here, but I will kind of just have a notes tab open here, and I will take notes and go back and forth and like do work in the browser and then come back here and write some notes. And so typically I'll have to do by end of day, and then literally just a list of stuff that I need to do. So that way, if I'm in a meeting or something, I can do stuff here, and then I can write my to-dos here. And then at the end of the day, I'll just make sure that I did everything here by the end of the day. There's also the classic like tiling window manager kind of features, like you can resize windows here. So there's 3 splits. There's 33%, there is 50%, and then there is 67%, I believe, 2/3 of the screen. And so you can have 2/3 and 1/3. You can have 3 things that are 1/3. You can also fold things in, so you can do that. It's column oriented. You can resize a whole column, but you cannot resize individually. So I cannot make, for instance, this separately bigger than the one at the bottom. And that's fine. I don't tend to want to do that ever. So you can have like a classic tiling window manager experience where you have a bunch of different terminals open here. Or if you wanted to just have like a small Firefox or something, you can do that. I switched to Niri because I was kind of over ricing my Hyperland. Like I found myself spending more and more time messing with my Hyperland keybinds and whatnot. And Niri is a great window manager with a bunch of different things coming out of the box. Like for instance, there is screenshots out the box. So if I just hit super and print screen, I can take a screenshot of whatever I want here. Another thing that Niri comes with out the box is a similar thing to xidle, where if you start typing, you see my mouse here, but if I start typing, it instantly hides itself, which is nice so that I don't have to worry about like my mouse blocking something. Like if it's here, it's never blocking my text. And then it also has one where it just like you hold it idle, and if you don't move for a while, then it will disappear on its own as well. I use the Grovebox theme, by the way, so this background is like a very classic Grovebox theme. It's just a Linux penguin and then a Grovebox colored rainbow here. I do run a very stock polybar. The only differences between kind of just like the default out the box polybar that you see everybody use is one, I have seconds up here. The reason I have seconds is a little more accurate when like running to meetings or something. You can have the exact second that you need to get up. Like if you know your meeting room is 15 seconds away, you can get up at like 56:45 and you can get there at exactly the right time. And then I also have the time in UTC, which I find helpful because I live in San Francisco, and so I was always doing a conversion from like my local time to the UTC time, which a lot of logs will tend to log in UTC just so they're all one standard thing. I used to do that conversion a lot in my head, and now I could just look up here and say it's 19 UTC. That log was from 17 UTC, that's 2 hours ago. The other thing that I think people will be most interested to see is that I am running on NixOS. I have been using NixOS for the last year or so, and then I've been using Home Manager for the last 2 years. I started off wanting to use NixOS, but I did not have the Nix skill yet. And so I was managing my Home Manager configuration on Debian for a while, and recently on my personal computer, I decided to switch to NixOS. There is definitely like a skill floor, like you have to be this good at Nix to be able to really effectively use NixOS, but there are some things that I think it makes significantly easier. Like for instance, if I go to my Nix config and I go NVIDIA, you'll see that I can just literally say like video drivers NVIDIA. Getting NVIDIA drivers on Debian working is not trivial. It's not necessarily the hardest thing in the world, but it is not like out the box easy. It's not like sudo apt-get or whatever it is, install NVIDIA. You have to actually like start the kernel modules, and it is a little difficult. With NixOS, you can do something like here, if you want some extra kernel packages, like for instance, I wanted the video for Linux kernel module, I can actually just say install it here and then mod probe it on boot. And this is something that is like incredibly easy to use on NixOS. This would be kind of difficult on other distros. For a while, I was using a USB Wi-Fi device, and I'll put a picture of it on the screen. It's not with me right now. But the actual drivers were not in Nix packages, but it was very easy to just say this person Ringcat is helpfully maintaining these drivers on GitHub. And so I can just point to a commit, and every time my NixOS rebuild switch, it will pull down these drivers and install them for me. NixOS is difficult, but once you know what you're doing, it turns out to be probably one of the easiest and best distros to use, in my opinion. So I do use the default fuzzel. I don't have very much here. I think the command is literally just fuzzel. I have it riced a little bit to look like Grovebox themed. It's not the most Grovebox themed, but it has a similar Grovebox theme to my polybar that I do have. So if I open up a Firefox window here, I do need the Firefox window open for this, but I do have two custom scripts using fuzzel. So if I hit Windows S, it will show up with this search bar. And now I could type in anything here. Like if I want to type in NixOS and I hit enter, it will focus my Firefox window, open a new tab, and do a Google search of NixOS. I could also do some Bang searches inspired by DuckDuckGo. So if I go Bang Nix Calce and I hit enter, it will open a new tab that shows Calce here. And I also have one set up for Home Manager, so Home Alacrity. It will show me a query of Alacrity. When I have my terminal open, I typically will be in a zellij session, which is one of the reasons why I don't really use the tiling window manager features too much. At most, I'll have maybe two windows open, one locally and one over SSH. So if I'm SSHing into something, I can have a terminal for SSH and one local. And typically I'll have that like both full screen because you're never really working in two terminals at once. So I can go back and forth like this between local and SSH. And so zellij is essentially a tiling window manager for your terminal. It is the category of software called multiplexers. Tmux is another one that's very popular. People use screen sometimes if you're very old. And so what you can do here is create new tabs. So if I hit tilde T new, so you can see in this bottom left corner, I have two tabs open now. So I can go left and right, and I could say echo hi here, and I have hi there, and I have another window open here. You can do things like open new panes. So now you have two panes. You can split those vertically if that's what you want to do. You can resize them and you can move them around. I have it set up, and I'll show you this in a second here, but I have it set up so that my pop-out panes are scaled like this. And so they're pretty large. So one thing that I can do frequently is I have my pop-out pane open, and I will do work in these pop-out panes, but I will have my editor on in the background. So I can go to my Nix configuration and I can type in hx dot and I can like do whatever I need here. But also I can do code here. So that's just kind of, I don't have to use two separate tabs. So I'll have these things as kind of like different workspaces. I'll have maybe another project open on another tab. And then on this first tab, I can rename it to like NXC for Nix config down here. And then I go here and I can have something like, other project. And so I can have two different Helix instances open and working on two projects kind of at the same time. So one of the features that I like the most about zellij is that you can actually edit the scroll back. So if I hit Super S and then E, it pops open the scroll back in my instance of Helix. Like say for instance, this is a large Terraform output that you want to make sure is safe. And so you want to share it to teammates and say, hey, are these good to apply? I can trim kind of the actual terminal stuff here. And then I could save this to a file. So in the bottom left corner, if I say write/temp/ Terraform output.txt, and then I have this file is now written into Terraform output.txt. I do that sometimes. The other thing that I do is copy a lot. So say I want to go to this URL, instead of having to take my mouse and highlight it and then Control-Shift-C, one thing that you can do is you can go here, hit F space and space Y. And now you have that copied to clipboard. So say I wanted to go to this URL, I could paste it there. This combined with Fish, which is the shell that I use, is a very powerful workflow. So if this pops up like a large command, or you want to put something here in a new command, Say for instance, I want to curl this. I don't actually know what curling that is going to do, so I'm not going to execute it. But if I hit Alt E, it will take just a terminal line into my editor. If I want to edit this URL, I can hit Super E and say I just want raw.com. I can write that back and I can quit. And now you see that it says raw.com. If you have a very long command, like for instance, a Docker command with a ton of flags, like you have -e some env equals something, and you have this like 100 times, it becomes very easy to just open this with your editor and edit the line. So say I only want that twice, I can write quit, and now I have it twice. To talk a little bit about Helix here, so if I go hx dot here, I open up my actual Helix, and this isn't going to be a Helix tutorial or anything. I don't want to really pitch Helix. Most people are really attached to their editors. I am attached to Helix. I was a VS Code user for a very, very long time. What had ended up happening was I was maintaining a super long VS Code configuration that was multiple thousands of lines, and I was using Nix to generate it. For instance, I was using a plugin called VS Code Harpoon to jump around different windows, and I wanted to bind all my alt keys, so Alt 1, Alt 2, Alt 3, Harpoon 1, Harpoon 2, Harpoon 3. And so you needed 9 lines in your key bindings. And so I was using Nix to generate my settings.json and my keybinds.json. And it became super unwieldy. Like, some plugins wanted you to have kind of a programming language in JSON, and it just became a major pain to maintain. So at some point I had realized I was kind of turning VS Code into Vim, and I wanted to switch to a different editor with kind of Vim-like key bindings out the box. And so I picked Helix because I didn't want to spend a ton more time configuring a new editor. I had already spent a very long time configuring VS Code, and I didn't want to have to redo all of that configuring Vim. And Helix seemed like a nice configuration that was like right out the box. So if I go to my Helix config in my Nix config, I don't have too much here. It's only, okay, so it's only 250 lines, which is like pretty big, but I have a bunch of LSPs configured. I have C++, I have Nix, I have Scala, I have Go, Python, JavaScript, Rust, and some other packages. It has a nice theme, and I have some keybinds. Most of the keybinds I use are out the box. I have a custom blame, so if I hit space B, you can see that I added this many months ago. I have this combined so that over SSH, I use a thing called system clip, is a Go program that I wrote that just kind of, when I SSH into a machine, it opens up a port. And so if I'm running Helix on a headless machine, obviously Wayland clipboard is not going to work. So space Y, which is yank main selection to clipboard, it will take this, it will base64 encode it, and it will pipe it through. And then locally, I have a server running, and it will take that, and it will base64 decode it and put it in my clipboard. So that way I can copy and paste from an SSH session. Another feature that I really like about Helix, and it's kind of one of the things that I did not know came out the box, and it is truly one of the features that I love to use the most. I used to be a big like 10J guy to go 10 lines down, or 10H guy to go 10 lines up. But one of the features that I found that was very, very cool is if you click the enter key, or I have binded it to the enter key, but it gives each word on the screen this 2-letter combo. And you could type in the 2-letter combo to jump to that thing. So HX is a thematic one. So let's say I want to jump here, and I type in HX, it will jump exactly here. And so that way you don't actually even have to worry about these relative line numbers. You can just hit enter and say I want to jump down to this word biome. I type in AW, and here it goes. I use that a lot. So say I want to go to that SH up here, I hit AX, and then I hit Z for view, and I hit Z to center it, and now I'm editing up here. So this is a really, really nice thing that I end up using a lot. The final kind of big program that I use often is Yazi. I do use Yazi quite a bit. So if I go into a temporary directory and I type in Yazi here, you can create new files using Yazi. So a/b/c/d/e/f. And so now I have a bunch of directories created in this temporary directory, and I can create new files. So let's say 1 and 2 and 3. And kind of tabception here, but you can click T in Yazi to open up a new tab. So you can go back and forth. And so one workflow that I do use often is, say you have files you want to move around. And I will say most of the time I don't even use Yazi. I just use like classic CP and MV. But I do use Yazi when I'm moving around a bunch of files. Like if I'm refactoring a bunch of files, I will use Yazi to like, say I have to move this, so I will just like hit X, and I'll go here and I'll hit P. So that's how I do that. But say, for instance, you have to move things very far. So if I have like another folder here, for instance, I call it other, I can hit V for visual, X to say I want to delete those. And then if I'm moving it very far, I'll go to a different tab where I have the right window open. So say I want to put it into this folder A, and I had these already selected, and you can tell that by this red line. I'll go to this tab and I will hit P, and they will be put here. And now I can go back and you can see they're actually pulled out of this file and put into here. So it's a really nice tool that I use very frequently. Another thing that I have recently discovered, which I think is pretty great, let's create a new file here in E and call it a thing. And let's go back a bunch of folders. If you hit A on the keyboard when you have Yazi open, it has this thing that says search via FD. And if I type in THIN, it will actually bring me all the way down all these folders and pop up just thing. And it's a really nice workflow, and I'm kind of trying to integrate that into my muscle memory because it's very, very helpful because I know kind of what file I'm looking for. So to be able to just FD it in Yazi is something that I think is really helpful. Another terminal thing that I use very frequently is Z instead of CD. So Z is a program called Zoxide. So one thing that Zoxide will do is it knows what directory you have been in, like it keeps track of your directory history. So if I go ls and I grep nixc, you'll see that nothing pops up. There's no folders in this directory called nixc. But if I type in Z nixc instead of CD, it will actually bring me to my directory. So I was in /temp/ this random temporary directory, but now I am in my Nix configuration directory. Here I am in my Nix configuration directory, and I go Z and I type in home-ser. It will bring me into my home server directory. So that's something that I find very, very helpful. And I use it a lot. I don't even really remember where a bunch of my folders are. It bites me sometimes. Sometimes I will Z into a project that I am already in, and it will take me to my second most frequent folder. And that's not the best, but you know, it is 99% of the time a very, very helpful tool to have. Another helpful tool that I have here is a Control-R kind of FZF-er. A lot of people just use fzf-fish, which is a totally fine option. I do use atuin. I don't use any of the special atuin features. I do use it basically just like FZF. So you can Control-R and it will show you everything that you have previously ran. So say I want to look at all my greps, I can say grep, and there you go. I was looking for Skyrim, and so ps-aux grep Skyrim. And say I want to execute that command, I can just hit down a couple times, and there you go. It can show me all the current Skyrims that I have open. If you take one thing from this video and you're not kind of already using fzf-fish or atuin, I would highly recommend you install it. This is probably the biggest time saver out of everything that I've shown you. Being able to kind of just look into your history and re-execute commands is something that probably saves me like 20-25 minutes a day at the very least. A lot of people are very partial to just holding up and looking for something. That's not a great way to execute when you can just like Control-R and type in lorem. The final thing that we have kind of been looking at this whole time here is my Starship configuration. So instead of git, if I hit Control-R git, there's not very many git commands. In fact, they're all git. I use a program called Jujitsu. An experimental VCS, probably the best way to say it. So you can see here, JJ uses kind of commit IDs that are separate from a content-based hash like Git uses. You can see that I'm currently on a commit called xkvz, and if I hit type in JJ log, you can see I have xkvz. And so this isn't going to be a JJ tutorial either. I could totally make one because I absolutely love JJ. It is nice to be able to see exactly which JJ commit you are on. And so what'll happen that I think is useful if I switch to, say, nzp, so jj edit -r nzp, let's ignore immutable, you can see that it actually gives me my branch name, which is just main. And so that's very helpful. So if I see I'm executing some commands back here, I could look back into my terminal history, and let's just cat like the flake.nix so that we can fill up our screen. You can see like I'm doing work here on the main branch, and then I want to say, okay, where did I do something else in the back? I can just scroll back and I can see that I executed edit nzp from kvz commit. And that's something that I find really helpful, and I use this right bar all the time. You can also see that I have how many lines I have removed and added. And then finally, I have the directory that I'm in. If it is a Git or JJ repository, it will just say the name of the repository. Otherwise, if it's like a just absolute directory, it will say the absolute directory. One last thing that I have here is on my left-hand side, I just have a lambda symbol. So if I execute a command that succeeds, say hi, grep hi, it will stay blue. But if I execute a command that fails, like hi, grep, something doesn't exist, it will turn red. And so if I have something that spits out a ton of output, I can see this turn red. And so that's just a nice way to say, hey, the previous command failed. This kind of sets off alarm bells in my head if I thought something that succeeded. So say I run a long test command, go grab some coffee, come back, and this is red. I know that something has failed. And that is it. I think that is all the terminal customization that I have here. There's probably things that I'm forgetting and things that I use frequently, and I'll watch this video back and be like, oh, I forgot to add, this or that. Probably, I think, a good stopping point for this specific video.